Alex Eala's revenge on Aryna Sabalenka was brutal, and yes, the cameras caught everything. What began as a tense handshake months earlier grew into a rivalry no one predicted, one fueled by pride, humiliation, and the quiet hunger to prove that precision could outlast raw power. This was never just about winning a match. It was about reclaiming identity, about silencing doubt, about turning a single moment of disrespect into a long-burning fire. When they finally met again under blinding lights and roaring crowds, every serve carried intention, every rally carried memory. What unfolded went far beyond tennis. It became a lesson in control, patience, and vengeance shaped by discipline rather than rage. For Alex, this was not competition. It was reckoning. It all started months earlier on a humid night in Dubai, where the lights felt heavier and the air clung to the skin. Alex Eala stepped onto the court with the same quiet focus that had carried her through junior dominance and national titles, her expression calm, her movements economical, her belief still fragile but growing. Across the net stood Aryna Sabalenka, established, feared, and unapologetically powerful, a player who didn't just hit the ball but imposed herself on matches. It wasn't merely youth versus experience. It was composure versus intimidation, restraint versus excess. From the opening serve, electricity crackled. Sabalenka's shots thundered through the court, heavy and unforgiving, while Alex responded with balance and court sense, redirecting pace, absorbing pressure. For stretches, the match felt even, almost poetic, until Sabalenka began to apply pressure beyond the baseline. Between points she smirked, celebrated loudly, lingered just long enough to let her presence be felt. When Alex missed an easy return, Sabalenka's stare cut across the net with a message that needed no words. "You don't belong here." As the second set wore on, frustration crept in. Every stroke Alex hit felt weighed down by expectation. The crowd leaned toward the familiar name, the proven force. Cameras zoomed in on Alex's face, capturing focus that bordered on fracture. Sabalenka sensed it immediately. She laughed after winners, shouted after aces, paced the baseline like the ending was already written in her favor. Then came the point that rewrote everything. Match point stretched into deuce, then another, Alex defending with pure will, chasing shots she had no right to reach. But Sabalenka thrived in chaos. She finished it with a fearless forehand down the line, a shot struck with finality. The stadium erupted. Alex stood still, racket loose, breath shallow. At the net, tension hung thick. Sabalenka leaned in and whispered something only partially caught by nearby microphones, something that sounded like, "Welcome to the big leagues." Then came the smile, dismissive and sharp, a moment replayed endlessly online. Alex forced a smile in return, but behind it burned humiliation and something deeper, something quieter. A promise. In the locker room, she avoided the cameras, sitting alone with a towel over her head while her phone vibrated non-stop. Clips of the handshake exploded across the internet. Fans dissected every frame. Some praised her composure, others mocked her silence. Sabalenka showed her who's boss. One comment read. Another replied, "Give her time." That night, Alex scrolled through everything. Every tweet, every highlight, every jab at her inexperience. She didn't cry. She didn't respond. She watched the moment again and again because something inside her had shifted. The loss didn't break her. It carved her. It turned pain into clarity. She replayed every point not as failure but as instruction. Each missed shot became a blueprint. Each smirk became fuel. Over the following days, she vanished from public view. No interviews, no statements, no training clips. But inside the silence, the change was unmistakable. Her workouts grew longer, her movements sharper. She stopped posting inspiration and started embodying it. One coach, watching from across the court, whispered the truth. Revenge. That was what drove her now. From that night forward, every drop of sweat, every repetition, every blister carried one name. Sabalenka. The cameras didn't know it yet. The fans didn't see it coming. But the next time Alex Eala stepped onto a court opposite Aryna Sabalenka, she would not be a rising star. She would be a storm. After Dubai, Alex disappeared from noise, not from tennis. No press, no social media, no commentary. Inside that quiet, something relentless formed. People say revenge is best served cold. Alex preferred it earned. Her training base shifted, days bleeding into nights, routine turning into obsession. 6-hour sessions became 8. Practice matches turned into wars. Coaches saw something they hadn't before. Ruthless focus. Unshakable intent. They called it rebuilding. Alex called it unfinished business. Every morning began before sunrise. She stood at the baseline with her eyes closed, replaying the handshake, the smirk, the whispered dismissal. It wasn't anger that pushed her. It was purpose. She didn't want to destroy Sabalenko. She wanted to surpass her. The transformation ran deeper than muscle and endurance. It was mental. Alex studied patterns, tendencies, rhythms. She learned Sabalenko's serve toss, her breathing before forehands, the subtle tells before drop shots. She wasn't preparing for a rematch. She was preparing for understanding. Every mistake in practice earned a quiet reminder. Next time. One afternoon, a coach tried to end a session after 5 hours. Alex looked up and said simply, "She trains longer." There was no argument. The tennis world noticed her absence. Rumors swirled. Injury. Burnout. Lost confidence. Those inside the training bubble knew the truth. The fire was there, contained, waiting. Then a short clip surfaced online. A leaked training video. Alex serving at full power in an empty indoor court, each strike echoing like thunder. The caption read, "She's coming back stronger." Within hours it went viral. Comments flooded in. "She looks different. Is this about Sabalenko?" Alex didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her eyes told the story. Sharper. Colder. Deliberate. The girl who once questioned her timing now demanded perfection. When asked if she was ready to return to the tour, she gave one answer. "Find me her bracket." Fate listened. Weeks later, the Madrid Open draw dropped. Same section. Quarterfinal collision possible. The internet erupted. Media dubbed it the revenge run. Alex stayed silent, training through the noise. Inside, her pulse steadied. The path had looped back. The woman who once dismissed her would now face the version she helped create. In the locker room before her first match, Alex looked into the mirror and whispered, this time, no fear. Every swing that week carried intention. Every win brought the collision closer. Reporters asked about the handshake, the rivalry, the whispers. Alex smiled politely and said she wasn't thinking about the past. Everyone knew better. What was next was the past, and it was ready to burn. The air inside the Madrid arena felt heavy, the kind of pressure that sits between anticipation and chaos, where thousands hold their breath at once. Every seat was filled, every phone raised, every eye locked on the court. This was the match everyone had been waiting for. Alex Eala versus Aryna Sabalenko. Revenge versus reputation. Precision versus power. When Alex stepped onto the clay, there was no wave, no smile, no acknowledgement of the crowd. Her face was still, unreadable, eyes fixed straight ahead. Sabalenko entered moments later like a force of nature, shoulders back, racket tapping against her thigh, feeding off the noise. She flashed a brief smirk, the same one from Dubai, as if to remind the world of how this rivalry began. But something was different now. The moment no longer belonged to her. From the very first serve, the contrast was obvious. Sabalenko came out swinging, unleashing pace, firing aces, shouting after points to claim territory. Alex absorbed it all. Her footwork was calm, fluid, her responses measured. She didn't rush. She didn't react. She adapted. Each rally stretched longer, turning brute force into a test of patience. Early games passed without drama, but beneath the surface, the tension climbed. Sabalenko tried to impose herself, stepping inside the baseline, flattening shots. Alex countered with depth, angles, and timing, redirecting power instead of resisting it. Then came the first statement. A rally that seemed endless, 23 shots of relentless precision, neither player willing to blink. Sabalenko attacked again and again, but Alex stayed balanced, moving with economy. Finally, she ripped a forehand down the line, a laser that kissed the chalk. The crowd exploded. This time, Alex didn't turn away. She looked straight at Sabalenko, cold and steady. No words. No celebration. Just a stare that said everything. I'm not the same. Cameras zoomed in instantly. Within minutes, the clip spread across social media. Commentators replayed it on repeat. Fans labeled it the death stare. The match escalated. Sabalenka responded with more aggression, louder shouts, clenched fists, trying to drag emotion back into her favor. Alex refused to follow. Her calm became armor. She broke serve late in the first set and closed it out with discipline, not drama. As the second set began, Sabalenka's frustration started to surface. Unforced errors crept in. Her celebrations felt forced. Midway through the set, after losing 2 crucial points, she slammed her racket into the clay. The stadium gasped. Alex didn't look. She walked to the baseline, bounced the ball 3 times, and delivered an ace straight down the middle, her fastest serve of the tournament. The crowd erupted. Sabalenka stared across the net in disbelief. Alex nodded once, barely noticeable, as if acknowledging a private memory. That one was for Dubai. Broadcasters called it the turning point. From there, the match became psychological warfare. Sabalenka fought, refusing to fade, but every attempt to intimidate met silence. Alex's shot selection grew sharper, her confidence unmistakable. By the final set, the tension was suffocating. Every rally felt personal, every point a conversation spoken only in spin and speed. At 5-4, Sabalenka served to stay in the match. She opened with a heavy first serve. Alex returned it deep. The rally unfolded fast, then faster. Sabalenka attacked the net. Alex passed her with a blistering backhand winner that painted the line. The chair umpire's voice cut through the noise. Game, set, match, Alex Eala. The arena exploded. Alex dropped to her knees, not in disbelief, but in release. Months of silence, obsession, and restraint poured out in that single moment. When they walked to the net, Sabalenka hesitated. There was no smirk this time. No whisper. Just acknowledgement. Alex extended her hand, firm and calm. Sabalenka took it. Cameras flashed from every angle. As their hands parted, Alex leaned in and whispered, barely audible, but caught by a sideline microphone. "Welcome back to mine." The internet detonated. Within minutes, clips flooded every platform. Titles screamed cold revenge moment. Fans debated her words, her intent, her expression. Analysts called it poetic justice. Those who followed the journey understood. This wasn't arrogance. It was closure. Alex didn't scream. She didn't gloat. She walked off the court with quiet satisfaction, knowing the cameras had captured redemption. But the story didn't stop there. Within an hour, Eala's revenge trended worldwide. Edits of her stare flooded timelines, slowed down, overlaid with captions like fearless and queen energy. Others looped the handshake, zooming in on her lips. Nobody agreed on what she meant, but it didn't matter. The moment had outgrown the match. Sports networks exploded. Rivalry reborn. A new mental titan. Fellow players chimed in. Some praised her composure. Others warned against crossing invisible lines. Sabalenka's supporters pushed back, accusing Alex of disrespect. Headlines split the narrative in two: dominance or arrogance. For every cheer, there was criticism. Through it all, Alex said nothing. She didn't post. She didn't explain. She trained the next morning as if it were any other day. The world refused to move on. Analysts replayed the handshake frame by frame, turning a whisper into a headline. Talk shows debated her attitude. Former champions offered opinions, some applauding restraint, others cautioning pride. The one person who could end the noise stayed silent. Then Sabalenka spoke. In front of reporters, she smiled faintly and acknowledged the loss. She played great. When asked about the handshake, she paused, laughed softly, and said she respected it, but added one line that reignited everything. "I don't forget easily either." The rivalry was official. Memes flooded in. Calm versus chaos. Ice versus fire. Tennis had found its newest cinematic duel. Alex's coach tried to keep her grounded, reminding her she'd done what she came for. She nodded, but her eyes still held a storm. Revenge had been achieved, but echoes lingered. Because revenge doesn't end with the score. It lives in memory, interpretation, narrative. That night, Alex finally opened her phone. She scrolled through the chaos until one comment stopped her. She didn't want revenge. She wanted respect. Alex smiled for the first time since the match. Someone had understood. This was never about humiliation. It was about reclaiming her place. The world demanded more. Eala vs. Sabalenka 2.0. When, as the next tournament approached, one truth became clear. This rivalry had only just begun. When the noise finally faded and the lights dimmed, Alex Eala was alone. No cameras, no microphones, no analysts dissecting her stare or her words. Just silence, the kind that settles after a storm has burned itself out. For days, the world had framed her victory as revenge, turning it into a spectacle, a headline, a defining moment meant to explain who she was. But sitting alone in her hotel room, Alex knew the truth was quieter and far more personal. She replayed the match on her tablet, not the handshake, not the whisper, not the viral moments, but the rallies. The footwork. The timing. The patience. Those were the real victories. Each point felt like a conversation with her past self, the version of her that once hesitated, that once doubted whether she belonged on the same court as giants. That was the opponent she had truly beaten. The truth behind what everyone called revenge was simple. It was never about humiliating Aryna Sabalenka. It was about freeing herself from that night in Dubai, from the voice that whispered she wasn't ready. She didn't want to destroy her rival. She wanted to destroy the limits she once believed in. But the world prefers loud stories. It clings to stares and whispers and moments that can be clipped and shared. So they called it revenge. Alex called it peace. Late that night, her coach found her sitting on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. "You did what you had to do," he said. Alex smiled faintly. "I did what I promised myself," she replied. He asked if it was worth it. She paused, breathing in the cool air. "I thought winning would silence everything," she said softly, "but the silence feels louder now." He understood. Great victories don't always bring closure. Sometimes they leave echoes that ask deeper questions. In the days that followed, Alex turned down interview after interview. She didn't want to explain the stare. She didn't want to justify the words she whispered. She owed no one that clarity. What mattered was what came next. She knew Sabalenka would return stronger, hungrier, carrying her own fire. But Alex wasn't afraid anymore. Revenge had served its purpose. It reminded her that strength doesn't need volume. That dignity can be sharper than pride. As she packed for the next tournament, she left her tablet on the bed, frozen on a single frame of her mid-swing, eyes locked, fully alive. For the first time, she didn't see anger there. She saw clarity. The cameras had captured everything they wanted. The fury. The defiance. The redemption. What they couldn't capture was this quiet truth. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone back. Sometimes it's about remembering you were never broken to begin with. Slowly, the headlines faded. The flood of tweets and debates gave way to the next story, the next controversy. But for Alex, something had shifted permanently. That match against Aryna Sabalenka lived in her memory not as a victory, but as a turning point. She had entered the arena chasing validation and walked out having found herself. Weeks passed. The tour moved on. New matches, new drama, new rivalries. Still, whispers lingered. Clips of her stare resurfaced every few days. Fans argued endlessly. Confidence or arrogance? Ice or fire? Alex no longer searched for the answer. She had learned the truth. Great athletes aren't defined by one win, but by how they rise after loss. And that night, she didn't just rise. She transformed. One morning, standing on her hotel balcony, she watched the sunrise spill across the horizon. The world below stirred, unaware of the storm that had lived inside her not long ago. "I'm not the same player anymore," she whispered. "I'm not the same person." The words weren't dramatic. They were honest. Her journey was no longer about revenge. It was about growth, respect, and the understanding that pain can either break you or build you. She had chosen to build. Days later, Sabalenka spoke again, calm but direct. She played better. She earned it. There was respect there now, unspoken but real, between two competitors who had tested each other's limits. That was what made the story endure. Not the anger, not the viral moment, but the transformation beneath it. During a practice session weeks later, Alex's coach asked if she still thought about that match. She smiled, tossing a ball into the air, racket gleaming in the sun. "Every day," she said, "not because of the revenge, but because it reminds me who I am." She served. The sound cracked across the court. Clean. Powerful. Purposeful. No tension. No anger. Just intent. The cameras had indeed caught everything they wanted. What they missed was the rebirth happening quietly between points, between breaths, between moments no one thought to film. And maybe that's how legacies truly begin. Not with noise, but with the silence that follows victory.